calendar. This is just one of the many places that we use as far as news is concerned to kind of come up with a fundamental basis for how we think the week might go. So this is forexfactory.com. And here it's a very nice, concise, easy way to see the news. You get the days of the week, the time of the news, which currency pair is going to be affecting, how much is going to be impacting that currency pair, what the actual news item is, details. If you click on this folder, it'll open up some details, and then the forecast for those items. So today was or is still today. Today is a holiday for the US and for Canada. So today is Labor Day, and the US and Canada are both celebrating it. So with that being said, since it's a holiday, what could you possibly have expected from these currency pairs? Anytime it's a holiday, volume is going to be really low, typically. And the stock exchanges for those markets are going to be closed. So you're not going to be able to trade individual stocks. The banks are closed. Most of the major transactions that are done on a day-to-day basis are not done. However, government transactions are still done in the background. So you will still see government transactions done. Anything that has been closed today and didn't really trade, tomorrow could possibly, or later on, could possibly open up with some gaps, or you could possibly have gaps in the morning when those markets open up, just solely because it was a holiday and then people are trying to make up for that volume lost. So going on through the rest of the week, tomorrow we don't really have a lot of high impact news coming out. We do have some economic news coming out from the US, like consumer credit. And we have small business index news coming out. So while those items are yellow on the Forex Factory calendar, one thing you have to think about when you're looking at the Forex Factory calendar is, have I heard something with those same words in it talked about on the news? So for instance, this news item right here, small business index, it's yellow, but small business. How many times have you turned on the TV and heard something about small businesses, PPP, stimulus, jobs related to small businesses? So while it's yellow, you've heard these words in the news, so that should be an indicator or indication to you that you should probably pay attention to that news item, because it might have a little more impact than normal. This one might not be so obvious, but to me, consumer credit is going to be one of those news items that I'm going to be paying attention to. Why? Because people need money to spend to make the economy continue to run. So if people are not working, people need money, and they're not necessarily getting a stimulus, and their jobs aren't giving them unemployment, or their unemployment has run out. They need some way to get income. So some people, based on their previous income, will go take out credit. There are still places out there that are giving out credit to people. And so consumer credit is going to be one of those areas that gets looked at. Also because of the fact that anytime we've had a market downturn, you can look at it throughout history. You can go back to 1929 when we had the Great Depression, if you'd like, and go all the way up forward. We've had about 7 instances where you can actually see where the market downturned, and when the market downturns, consumer credit shoots up. So I'm expecting that consumer credit is going to be high. Consumer credit has been going up ever since the last mini downturn in like 2016, 2018. So I'm suspecting that it's going to be high. Why is that important? Again, because people need money to spend to make the economy continue to run. But it's also important because this money has to be paid back eventually. So this is going to let us know also how willing lending institutions are going to be to actually lending money to people in times as these. The Fed has provided all the foundation that a lot of banks and creditors need to be able to lend money out to the people. They did this back in 2008. They've done it ever since to make sure that the banks have whatever it takes to make sure that the people have money, because the Fed knows that that's how the economy runs. So that's what I'm looking at for tomorrow. Wednesday, the biggest news that's on the calendar is Canada's bank rate. These are going to be the bank rate statements. So anytime they have, not just Canada, but anytime a central bank is doing a rate change or has anything coming up on the calendar about a rate, whether it's the interest rate, overnight rate, bank rate, whatever the case may be, there's always going to be a statement that goes along with it to tell why they did it, what the outlook is for that rate, and who voted yes, no, and then just was very neutral on the whole idea. It will also tell you who voted to increase, decrease, or keep the rate the same. So you'll be able to see all of these votes in the rate statement that comes out. While it's not like super duper important because it's not red, this US item that comes out on Wednesday is going to be slightly important because it's the 10-year bond auction. For any of you who own or have looked at bonds and treasuries, any of you that pay attention to the yield curve, anything the Fed says about rates and that sort of thing. The bond auction is important because this is going to let us see the anticipation of the market around these bonds. And then also to see like, okay, what is this rate going to be set at? Is it higher, lower? Is it the same? Because that's either going to pull people into the market, the bond market, or take people out of the bond market, which is down the line going to have an effect on the dollar as well, since, you know, we've been having this whole conversation about inflation. Thursday is going to be a pretty loaded news day for the US. We don't get oil inventories on Wednesday this week, we get them on Thursday. So with that being said, there's quite a bit of news on Thursday that we're going to be paying attention to. First set of news items that are coming out are for the euro. So those news items are coming out actually right before New York opens. It's still London session. It's just the second half of London session when this news is coming out. So volatility in EU is actually going to be extremely high because if you guys remember, London session starts at about 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time and goes into 11 Eastern Standard Time. So while you have those 8 hours, if you look right in the middle, New York starts around, technically the market opens at 9:30, but for Forex purposes, some of the futures markets tend to open up around 7:30 to 8 o'clock in the morning. So EU is going to be super volatile because not only is it just EU news, but it's an EU rate news item. So it's the main refinancing rate. I don't expect for them to change this. As I told you guys before, I don't expect for many of the banks to be changing any of their rates for a while. So the main reason why these news items end up red, if a lot of banks have said that they're not going to change their rate, is solely because it's a rate interest, it's an interest rate or just a rate change news item. And those things have a heavy impact on the value of the currency. And then also there's a statement that comes with questions, a question and answer session with these. So the statement gives a lot of insight into what that bank plans to do in the future. The questions are sometimes not submitted ahead of time. So these Fed officials or bank officials are answering some of these questions off the cuff. So there's a statement, and then actually with the EU, we get a separate press conference. So that press conference is going to be question and answer, and, just all those things that I just mentioned, pay attention to. In addition to that press conference coming out or starting at 8:30 on Thursday morning, we get producer price index and unemployment claims coming out at 8:30. So EU is not going to be just volatile at 7:45. It's going to be volatile at 8:30, super volatile at 8:30, because the press conference is going on and you have unemployment claims and producer price index news coming out. Producer price index news has to do more with the industry side, has to do more with the actual businesses and their expenses, and how those prices are calculated together, to kind of show company compared to company, buyer compared to buyer in the market, how much they're paying. So it puts it in a way that you can actually compare two companies, compare two buyers, without actually having to worry about, is one bigger than the other, or one have more employees than the other. Unemployment claims, again, this week we expect or hope that unemployment claims are going to be below forecast. We're hoping that fewer and fewer people, as the weeks go on, don't have to submit for unemployment claims. And again, remember that this unemployment claim news is new people, brand new people to the unemployment system, or people who have exhausted 13 weeks, have gone through a 13-week period without, and are now going back onto or going back into the unemployment claim system. So that's 8:30. Then later in the morning, towards the end of New York, or towards the end of London, towards the middle of New York session, which is another volatile time because we have a session closing and we're in the middle of another session. We have oil news coming out, we have a Canadian speech, and we have a speech from Christine Lagarde. While that speech from Christine Lagarde actually happens after London session is closed, it's still the peak of London, or it's still the peak of New York session, sorry. So please pay attention. Christine Lagarde is very open with how she speaks. She's nothing like the previous gentleman that was in her seat, or in that particular seat. She's not scripted. She tends to just be very blunt and open. So her speeches tend to move the market, or tend to have more impact on the EU than most other speeches and news items that come out for the euro. And we have another auction. It's a weird time. It's at 13:01 or 1:01 in the afternoon. It's the 30-year bond auction. So since we have two bond auctions this week, I'll just go ahead and tell you next week, whenever we get our speech from Jerome Powell, he is going to be talking about the yield curve, because the 30-year bond, the 10-year bond are two components of what gets looked at in the yield curve. The yield curve is what they look at to determine how well the economy is doing, how well inflation is going, how well the dollar is doing. They look at it to determine and see a lot of things. So while you might not have to remember, or you shouldn't just really remember what this number is or what the auction result is, reference back to it before next Wednesday. And then Friday, we have Eurogroup meetings all week. So Friday is going to be a volatile day, not only for EU, but for the UK, because they're going to be talking about hopefully resolving their end of the Brexit issues. And then we have consumer price index news coming out at 8:30 on Friday morning, which helps us to determine inflation on items that we buy every day in the grocery store. So for those of you who haven't heard me talk about consumer price index news and inflation before, think about how you might have been in a conversation with someone and they've said, oh yeah, back in the day, or candy bars used to be 50 cents. I could get 2 of them with a $1 bill. Now candy bars can be anywhere from, I don't know, 89 cents to $1.09. So you're not able to get 2 anymore. You're only able to get 1. Consumer price index measures all of that stuff. That's what it's looking at. That's what it's measuring. The increase in price that consumers are having to pay, or decrease, but it's measuring how much people are actually paying, because if inflation is going up, that means that we're paying more for items and our dollar is not stretching. This number essentially tells us how elastic, how stretchy the dollar is that's in your pocket. When you go to the store and you pull out a $20 bill, how much can you get with that $20 bill? How much are you able to stretch that $20 bill? Could have been that 20 years ago, you could have bought a whole buggy of groceries with $20, and now you might be able to buy like a handful of items with $20. So just know that that's how that news item is measured, measuring the state of our economy, parts of our economy, and that's how it affects you. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about next week because I'll do that Friday. But one thing I just want to show you is Wednesday. I told you, or for those of you who were on the call Friday, you saw this, but look at Friday. Look at Wednesday of next week. This is next Wednesday, the 16th. I'm just showing you how all of this news that's coming out this week is getting ready to stack up. It's all going to stack up and come out and be influenced right here at 2 o'clock. You have economic projections, a Fed statement, Fed rate, and a Fed press conference. Everything that's coming out this week, everything that came out last week is going to be talked about right here in this, I'd say maybe 1.5 to 2 hour span of time, because this press conference tends to be a little long. So remember that everything that we talked about last week, everything we're talking about this week, take notes, because it's going to come up again. And next Wednesday is going to be a pop quiz that I'm not even going to quiz you on. Like, you're going to be hearing Jerome Powell talk about stuff, and you're going to see the market move. And you have to know and understand why the market's moving based on stuff that we've already talked about, because it's going to be happening in real time. By the time I put the message in the group chat, it's going to be too late. So just make sure you guys are taking notes this week, because it is going to come up again. You're going to hear it a lot next week. So that's all I have for you guys for the news. Anyway, if you guys have any questions, Mr. Levels, can you give them a chance to unmute just in case they have questions so I can answer those. If you guys don't have any questions, I'll turn it over to Mr. Levels so he can get started with the technicals. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Levels so he can get started with the technicals.
Thank you, Corman. Great job, by the way. That was great. It's going to be a crazy news week next week. All right.